Sunday. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. My name is Jason Cripps, and I'm part of the panel of wonderful people that join me every Sunday night to do this broadcast. And we have a lovely topic for you tonight. Topic for tonight, of course, is Geronimo, Curtains of the Waterfall. So if you're listening to the playback, if you want to skip all the frivolities and the welcomes at the front, you can skip to about the 10-minute mark, and we will begin diving into this topic. But for now, I would like to introduce the panel to you guys, and we'll start out from left to right on my screen. The first one would be Glenn from Australia. Glenn, how are you tonight?
I'm very well, thank you.
Fan.
Don't mind if later you hear a chainsaw in the background. It's not the Chainsaw Massacre. It's just some trees in the
backyard. I'm glad you specified, because who knows what kind of ideas people get out there, what's going on, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're cutting down some trees in the yard, some pesky trees.
I think someone poisoned them. They were.
Oh,
yeah.
They were like dying. They didn't look good.
Yeah. And they all died in a week. Within a week of each other, so
yeah.
Anyway,
well, thanks for being here. Yeah,
pleasure.
Yes, and the lovely ukulele playing in the background is done by none other than Jen. Jen, how are you?
How can you hear that?
I can hear it. It's lovely. Like I've said, I would love for you to always play the ukulele at the beginning and end of the show. I think it's wonderful.
Sweet. Yeah. I am doing well. It's cloudy and windy here in Virginia. Get some storms coming through.
Yeah.
But I am so grateful to be here with you guys. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
We're grateful to have you. So spring has sprung, and along with that comes beautiful weather, but it warms up a little bit. And there are storms here as well in the Charlotte metropolitan area. We had one come through yesterday that was pretty heavy, a lot of rain, and there was even a flood warning here. And then north of us, they've got tornadoes, so that's the downside, I guess, of the weather change when it turns from cold to hot. But I love this time of year. This spring and fall are obviously my favorite. But this isn't about the seasons that I enjoy. We also have with us Esteban. Melted Zone is the name of his channel. And before we say hello to him, just want to let people know that he has started doing YouTube channels. And from what he says, he has 2 episodes thus far. So please go and take a look at his content, Melted Zone by the same name. And Melted Zone, Esteban, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me join today. It was awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Love to have you. Everything going okay with you? You were talking before we went on air about you have some classes you're taking and how God has used you in your college to speak truth to other students and teachers, right?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. Been doing some hard studying, and I've been helping others who are believing more in their works than in the gospel, and I've been showing them how the Old Testament how it's Jesus Christ concealed in there, and showing them through the New Testament.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're glad to have you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Also, we have, I don't know if he was eating dinner with his family, so I don't know if he's back yet, but we'll ask Matthias if he's here from Talking Doctrine yet. Nope. Okay, so we'll move to Steve on my screen. Steve has a new channel, Vessels of Warfare, and he did have a channel, still does have a channel. You can go and look at content. Soldier for Christ, We Are at War. He started a new channel rather than just changing the name. So it's Vessels of Warfare. Our friend Steve is here with us tonight. Steve, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. Every day keeps getting better and better. A lot of good things coming.
Awesome.
Yeah, you ever get that feeling like something good's coming, and some of it you know what it is, and then other things you just don't know, but you're excited about your life? That's how I feel.
Nice.
For those older
That's pretty
listeners
cool.
who have seen or heard West Side Story, there's a song in there that's on this very topic of something's coming, something good. Don't know when, but it soon catch the moon, one-handed catch. I'm not going to ruin anyone's evening by trying to sing it, but if you care to check it out, it's something's coming on the West Side Story soundtrack, and you'll get what I mean. All right. I'm in a great mood. You know, I just want to
Nice.
say I've been operating under some what I consider lack of sleep, just being up late, and I've been having some sciatic nerve issues where I've got pain running through my leg. It's been about 6 weeks, a little bit over 6 weeks, and it's finally stopped. So the past 2 nights I've been able to sleep straight through the night without any problem. So
Sweet.
woke up this morning bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to take on the day, and it's still happening. All right, next we'd like to say hello to everyone in the chat room. Guys, thank you for being here, guys and girls. That's the thing, you know, where I'm from, the term guys is used, you know, synonymously between boys and girls. In some places they say use guys. Well, we don't do that in Michigan. It's just guys. Hey, guys, how are you guys doing? So how are you guys doing in the chat room? Oh, gosh. Sarah Jane says she's doing her taxes. Oh, my gosh. That's like the worst. Yeah, everyone cringes when you say doing taxes, right? You get that disgruntled sound coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taxes.
Blah. Taxes.
Yikes.
Ouchie.
Ouchie, yeah, that's another word too.
Chihuahua.
Chihuahua, yeah. Hello, Celine. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hendrix. I said hello to Sarah Jane, sort of. Actually, I just talked about her taxes and stuff, but hello to Sarah Jane. I'm sure some people are just getting the notification that they'll be coming in, and we can say hello again later. All right, let's get into it. Get right to it. So we have the topic tonight, which is Geronimo, Curtains of the Waterfall. Now, before I begin this, Glenn writes the write-ups for the show, so I'll be talking about myself from his perspective, which will be fun. Easter next week, no show. Old man Cripps said something about postponing so he could celebrate his 50th. Now that he's heading over the hill, we don't want to cause him too much stress, do we? Do we? Maybe there's something wonderful waiting for Mr. Cripps when he looks through the curtain of the waterfall. As far as TSL is concerned, normal service will be resumed after Easter. No formal questions this week, other than those we ask ourselves and by discussion. For us adults, it's the adventure of being a role model. It's the adventure of relating to the young or our children, grandkids, nephews, nieces, and all the kids out there, and the things they do that make it all worthwhile. What do they say? The mark of an adult is measured by the child within. Title song is Geronimo by Sheppard, by the way. They are from my home city, Brisbane. It's fun. It makes me smile. I hope it does that for you likewise. Lyrics are included in the link that we've added on there, so get a chance, go watch that and listen. It's great stuff. We've included it in the description below. I wonder what it's like for a child to grow up in the USA compared with other places. What's good for kids in the USA? What's not? What are our obligations as adults? Why is it, do you think, the individual is often prompted rather than promoted than a sense of family and community? Why are children encouraged to be pseudo-adults at such a young age? Is it all just about commercialism? How do we integrate social media into a child's life and yet ensure they still remain grounded in the real world where people matter and are not just at the end of a text message? Consider the Japanese way. Early formative years are about not doing maths, etc., but about education of the person, values, respect, consideration. society. Kids get off their backsides and help keep their school clean and tidy. They don't do graffiti. They grow up with a different kind of philosophical perspective where there is appreciation for what the opportunities they have been granted. In an essay on expectations of Japanese children, Linda Bennett posted the classroom rules for a first grade class in Hiroshima. 1, be cheerful. 2, be active. 3, be enthusiastic. 4, smile. 5, enjoy your life. Do we as adults have a responsibility to encourage things like this? Set standards and boundaries, objectives, etc., but at the same time do it in an atmosphere of love and understanding? Do you agree discipline is not so much about wrongdoing as it is about providing a model to a different path? Continuing Linda Bennett's essay on Japanese children, they introduce early on many of the values we often find so difficult as adults to come to grips with. I'm going to mispronounce these, I'm sure, but I'm going to give it a shot. Hansai is self-discipline. Gambaru is persistence toward a goal. Yasashi, being kind-hearted. Juba na, being strong and healthy. Susunde benkayo, studying hard. Amaryari, being sympathetic and empathetic. Shaka sai, being socially conscious. And koachosi, being cooperative and harmonious. What do we think? Well, we think that my pronunciation of Japanese words was horrible, but we'll continue. Anything to add or subtract? Is this where we should be heading? The role model we show today sets for the young the adventure of tomorrow. It's in our hands. There we go.
Pronunciation wasn't too bad at all.
Oh, well,
Sweet.
thank you. Oh, my goodness. I'm right. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. You can't see it, but I'm rubbing my shoulder and blowing on it like it were an apple.
What?
My fist. Blowing on my fist and rubbing on my shoulder.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
You're like,
Yeah, maybe I should have said the fist instead of the way it was phrased. That's recorded. That's on a recorded line now.
that's awesome. Okay.
Yes, excellent. All right, so a few more people came in. We'll say hello to them too, and then we'll just get started. Well, Cosmo, welcome, buddy. Glad to see you. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well today. All right, so the topic tonight, we do have a couple questions kind of in the body. Let's check and see if Matthias is on with us yet. Matthias, are you here? Nope. Okay, we'll go back to it. All right, so we'll use the panel we have and start with the few questions we have in the description, kind of to get the conversation going. So the first one we have is, I wonder what it's like for a child to grow up in the USA compared with other places. Now, I realize that other than Glenn, we all live here in the USA. I don't know how well-traveled you guys are. Actually, Matthias just came back, so before we continue with the questions, we'll say hello to Matthias. Matthias from Talking Doctrine, how are you tonight, sir?
I am well. Sorry, I thought maybe you guys were talking about me right when I walked in the room.
No problem. No problem at all. We understand.
I'm a little bit behind, but I'm doing well. I pray that all are doing well as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're definitely glad to have you. And just to explain, if you're listening to playback, you know, Matthias, Sundays is a big day for him. He has his own channel called Talking Doctrine, and he's a very busy guy. So out of his generosity and good spirit, he is part of the panel for True Story Live and has been for quite some time. And even though he's busy, he does make time for us. And sometimes he runs a little bit late, but we understand, and we're grateful to have him here. So thank you, sir.
Well, I appreciate it. Yes, sir. It's busy, and we've got we've got families that eat together between two broadcasts. So sometimes conversation, especially when it's about the Lord, just stretches. It's like, oh, it's 8:15.
Yeah, yeah, that happens for sure. Well, thank you so much. We're glad you're here. And hello to Golgotha. Appreciate you being here, buddy. It's always a pleasure to see you. Just popped in, said hello, everyone. So I'm saying hello to you as well. All right, so we'll go back to the first question, which I'll reread. I wonder what it's like for a child to grow up in the USA compared with other places. I was saying that I'm not sure how well traveled the panel is, but other than Glenn, we all pretty much grew up here, as far as I know. I don't know if you've been able to observe children from other places. I have, just based on my studies of psychology and sociology as compared to the cultures of other places, but it's purely book learning and being in the classroom. So it's not by actually observing these things for myself. So my opinion would be generally from my own, what I know about the way I grew up in comparison to other places. So we'll probably get some of this from Glenn as far as the differences in Australia. That'll be helpful. So we'll actually start with Glenn. Glenn, what was it like? You have probably some knowledge of what it was like for children in the USA, but what was it like for you in Australia? Putting the same question to yourself.
It was certainly a lot different than what it is now. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's been very much consumed by the social media, as you'll see down a few paragraphs when you read out. It's just like, everyone's got the phone, everyone's got the basically the very inanimate communication.
Sure.
We all talk to or type on a phone, and we don't look up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so way different. But I'd say I can certainly compare it with the Japanese because I've got a bit of experience there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can say from the article that you added here, there's quite a bit difference. Now, if you would have asked this question in the 50s, it might have been more similar to what the Japanese do, from my understanding of the USA, the way things were done back then.
I'm not sure, but I think the self-promotion aspect is really strong now. There's so much that the peer pressure, like if you want to call it that,
sure,
is humongous compared with what it was, and it's just so much emphasis on bullying and making it difficult. It's difficult for a child to find their place compared with what it used to be like. Now this doesn't happen that I'm aware of with the Japanese system.
Okay,
but it certainly happens with the Australian system. I can't speak for USA, obviously you can, but yeah, it's a big issue here.
Would you say that that's because they've kept that same standard for quite a long time and they're just not deviating from it, even with the advent of the social media and the phone and all that stuff? I mean, I can't imagine they'd be allowed to have their phone there in the classroom.
They're allowed. If you jump on the train, that's full of kids,
Mm-hmm.
school kids, whether they be primary school age or high school, they've all got their phones. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're communicating with each other, but they're either playing games or doing something with it.
Sure.
What about in the classroom though?
Oh no.
Now see, I do know my sister has a private Christian school that they've been a part of, and I do know that they do not allow their kids to have their phone in class. And if they're seen with the phone in the class, then it gets confiscated for a period of time. And then eventually, if there's too many infractions, they literally keep the phone to the end of the year. I don't know how they get by with that, with the parents who have purchased a phone, and then the school has confiscated it for the rest of the school year. Don't even ask me. It just seems ridiculous. But
that only works if the parents go along with it.
Yeah, exactly right, Steve. Yeah, no doubt. But so I'm just saying that, and I also did some substitute school teaching in Georgia when I was there, and did that for a year. And they had strict rules about having your phone in class. So I think even in America, at least it was several years ago, still a rule. I don't know if it's softened and people are allowed to have their phones here or not. But at least that was a rule at some point last time I was in the schools.
Just one thing, I think phones here were initially given to children, even young children, from a safety perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't meant to be used as social media. Whereas, see, in Japan, that doesn't exist. It's like another planet. You don't. If I say go to a park and there's a child there and I speak to that child, that I'm not a pedophile. I'm just an adult who they respect.
Right. Of course.
See, the paranoia of Western society has just made everyone so sensitive that you can't just say or do anything without being slated as some sort of pervert.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist there. I mean, quite obviously, if you're in a park and you want to take a photo of a child and they're with their parents, you just do the courteous thing. And if they're all dressed up, say in national costume, they look absolutely beautiful, little kids.
Yeah.
You just speak to the parents, whether it be by gesture or in English. If they a lot of times they don't understand you, but I've never been knocked back yet.
Yeah.
Never.
Okay.
The fact that you embrace the child for being a child,
right,
over there is so appreciated. Whereas here, if you went and said to a parent, "Can I take a photo of your child?" they'd be on the phone to the police.
Oh yeah, we could actually do a show about that. There's a guy that does a video of that where if you walk up to some stranger and record them, the kind of reactions people have in the USA to that being done, you wouldn't believe it. That people just get very, very upset about being recorded in general, but specifically in normal settings like a library or a restaurant or things like that, which this guy does. He documents this reaction, this out of proportion reaction that people have to being recorded. So that makes sense to me. So if someone was in a park, as you're saying, Glenn, in America, and you're recording their child or asked to take a picture or asked to take a video, they wouldn't react well to that for sure. So as far as this first question goes, I'll kind of try to start out first. Again, I can't compare it to other places, but I know that growing up for me, it was a private Christian school, and they had a lot of rules. So I don't feel like we had anywhere near as much leeway as the public schools. I did go to public school, kindergarten, first grade, and half of second grade, and then again, I repeated my senior year by choice to get out of the debacle at Heritage USA with Jim and Tammy Baker, which I've told that story before. But just saying that it was a public school that I went to, and they had rules about some things, and other things were allowed. They didn't have social media at that time, so there's no way that would enter into the conversation at all. But growing up for me, there were rules. As far as growing up is concerned in America, I think that back then it may have been a little bit different, as I say. I don't know, Jen, you went to a public school some, right?
Yeah, I did. Back when I was in public school, we didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So it was, more writing notes, or doodling in notebooks, which I did a lot of.
Sure.
But yeah, so it was just very different. I can't even imagine what school's like now. With all the devices and stuff, and
right,
the self-absorbed era.
Yeah, absolutely. That you could call it that.
Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, so it wasn't really a problem then, and I feel like there was less bullying, and there just was less issues. It seemed.
It did seem.
I live in Williamsburg, Virginia, so this town is pretty good. I mean, there's not a whole lot of gangs or crime.
Sure.
So
the gangs in Williamsburg.
Yeah, the colonial gang.
Yeah,
people in the tri-cornered hats.
I was just gonna say, yeah, they do the throwback costumes and carry muskets around and terrorize the people.
Beat people with their fifes and drums.
That's right. That's awesome.
No, so it was actually there was a little bit of bullying, but it really wasn't that bad. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Esteban, I know you're a little bit younger than some of us on the panel, so maybe you have a perspective. Did you have social media and cell phones when you were going to school? And did you go to a private Christian school or public school?
Growing up, I would have to say like maybe in middle school is when I started getting a cell phone, but it wasn't like iPhones or anything like that. And then I had a flip phone, the old flip phone.
Yeah, I like the flip phone.
Yeah.
Flip that sucker open and take a call, just like I'm Captain Kirk on the deck of the Enterprise.
Yeah, and then finally, I think maybe it was around my sophomore year that the iPhone started coming out more.
Okay. Sophomore year, iPhones.
I think so. I could be wrong.
It hadn't even kicked in. Now, so you had social media then at that time, but it seems like it wouldn't have kicked in as much as it is now.
Well, I mean, I went to an all-laptop high school, so it was they only allowed maybe about 300 per class, like students in. And you had to have like good grades and everything, and a good GPA in middle school and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, my teachers, they in high school and stuff like that, I could tell you they didn't really care as long as you got your stuff done first, and then once you got your stuff done, they were like, "Go ahead, go on your social media, go on whatever you want to go on. It doesn't bother me any." So
yeah, okay, and that would apply to the lenience or strictness of certain teachers that within the system would maybe allow kids a little bit of leeway or not any leeway, right? So it's their discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I had one teacher that was like very strict on that kind of stuff, and she was actually, man, oh man, she used to get up on me. Like she would put her foot on my desk if I ever had my computer open while she was trying to talk.
Okay, yeah. Well, see, then that's similar. Even before phones and social media, I had stricter teachers sometimes, and I had more lenient teachers that would let you, as Jen says, doodle in your notebook and stuff if you had your work done and things like that. You know, and then others wouldn't. Matthias, what about you, sir? I know that you're closer to my age or closer to Jen's age, I think. So
yeah, no social media or cell phones when I was growing up.
Yeah,
I mean, no, there were. They were just in a bag, and it was like you had to carry it on your shoulder if it actually was portable.
Social, you carrying social, yeah, the bag phones you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't know what you're talking about. The younger folks don't know what a bag phone is. So the bag phone, the phones used to be much larger. I think.
Like the Zach Morris brick.
Yeah, that's.
It's like the bag was pre-Zach Morris.
Yeah.
I love Saved by the Bell. It's my guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever heard of a bag phone.
See, I was saying.
Such a youngin'. I love it.
I know, that's great. Yeah, so the cell phone that you carry around, that's not a flip phone anymore, right? Back then, the components that were included to make the phone even work were included. You carry around in a bag, and then the ones for the car, you put the bag in the car, and then had a cord, and you could be on the phone, but it was a larger phone. You certainly wouldn't carry it around in your pocket with you for sure. It was a big bulky item.
It had a normal receiver handle and everything.
Yeah.
All right, I'm putting a link in the chat so people can look at it.
There you go.
That's completely retro.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
My dad actually
having one of those would be like, today having the tip top.
Oh yeah, totally.
Phone, the most expensive phone you can buy right now. Yeah. Probably not even on the market.
Right.
So how rare those phones were.
Yeah, if you had one, you were like rich.
You were a yuppie. Yeah. That's what they were. They were yuppies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys are talking about the one there's this one that's over $1 million. It's a cell phone, and it's made out of 24 karat gold.
Oh Lordy, no, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, like that. This one is it can never be hacked. Like the government can't even hack it. It's so.
That's what they said about the Titanic.
Nice. What about you, Steve? Wow. You're closer to my age too, so
a teeny little bit.
Little bit, yeah. So they when you were in school, were you at beyond or before the social media / cell phone?
I was pretty much before it. Email was like late high school,
right?
And maybe dial up and AOL.
Yep.
AOL.
You got mail, or
got mail.
Yeah, and that was like the first instant messenger thing, Totally. But mainly got into that when I was in college, like, or late high school, I'd say, my last year.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a cell phone until I graduated.
Yeah.
And I got my own Nokia, not a flip phone.
Right.
The original, like,
the little tiny guy. Yeah.
An inch wide by like 5 inches long by like 2 to 3 inches wide. And it's like the battery lasted for 5 days.
Yeah, sure.
Like, what happened to those batteries?
Yeah, no, they did away with those. Yeah. Hello to Stacey Ann in Arizona. Thanks for showing up.
And Daryl's in the house.
Yes, Daryl.
And I grew up in. I went to a Christian school, so.
Oh, Christian school. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Remember that. Okay, so the next question that ties into this particular topic is what's good for kids in the USA, what's not? What are the obligations as adults? So what's good for kids in the USA? I would say it's good for them to start weaning themselves of social media, especially like during the school day.
Yeah, more recess, I think.
Yeah.
Starting at a young age. I know. Yeah. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm serious.
Oh, you're serious about more recess?
Yeah, I think kids need to be outdoors more.
Oh, yeah. So we had that growing up. I mean, we had recess and whatnot.
I'm not gonna lie. Like my little sister, she's so consumed with this social media stuff that she has high anxiety from it.
Oh, so talk about what the anxiety comes from, Esteban.
The fear. She like there was this thing going around that the world's gonna end or something, and she started freaking out. And I was like, hey, what are we supposed to remember? And she goes, what do you mean? I'm like, Jesus. Remember Jesus. Remember, it's only him. And she's like, yes, Jesus. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, relax, Yeah. The world's not going to end right away, man. Remember Jesus. He's coming. He's the one that we're supposed to focus on.
Yeah.
Focus on him, And she's like, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
She but she was freaking out because like they were posting some weird stuff about what's happening around the world, and I was like, hey, the Bible told us this stuff was going to happen, but who are we supposed to focus on? And she's like, yeah, Jesus.
Oh.
So it got her calmed down.
Awesome.
From that.
So you're saying that so this is a good
praise God.
Yeah, absolutely. So social media with the things that come on there and the things to be worried about that people are the trending topics and things like the Tide Pods, for instance, or all the challenges that come up. The cinnamon challenge where you put a spoonful of cinnamon in your mouth.
Oh yeah.
Or the ice challenge.
Yeah, the Tide Pods. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
or the bird box.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh my god.
How about throwing the cheese on the face of like babies? What's up with that?
Oh, what? I never heard of those ones.
Yeah, wait a minute, Jen. Throw the cheese on the face of baby?
Yeah, people were doing the sliced cheese that's in the cellophane,
the
fake cheese. They would take the cellophane off and toss the square slice at babies' faces so it'd stick to their face. And, and it is kind of funny. And they started doing it to pets like cats and dogs.
Oh,
it was actually kind of funny, but it's like the cheese challenge. Yeah, babies. Which that kind of made me think, okay, it's like Pizzagate or something. What's going on? Like what? It still was funny, but yeah, I don't know. I actually was gonna say with social media, I know that some dogs and cats. That's funny. With social media, I know anxiety can come from how many people have liked a post or commented on a post, and it's like the endorphins of checking it and like, oh, somebody else liked my post. It's almost like somebody likes me kind of stance.
Yes.
And so
endorphins.
Yeah.
You get endorphins when your comment is liked or loved or something like that, and it's being built into people's childhoods to think that that's real.
So it's almost like the equivalent to back in the day before social media and cell phones of you making a new friend, kind of. You know what I mean? Or being popular, being part of a larger crowd of friends.
Yeah.
That does kind of remind me too of when I was in middle school and high school. That like MySpace, I used to try to put my background and put background music on my MySpace page to try to get more people.
Yeah.
To try to get more people to come in and talk to me. So I would have like on my background Michael Jordan, when he was dunking the basketball in the background.
Yeah.
And then I would have like Space Jam playing in the background of it.
That's a trip, man. That's a trip. I remember I was on MySpace. Now I didn't put music on there to bring people to my page. I just did it because it was the thing that people were doing with the MySpace stuff. I mean, you would decorate your page in a certain way, and I kind of like that you had that leeway, which Facebook doesn't offer. I mean, with Facebook, your page.
Yeah, MySpace was better than Facebook.
I would agree in some ways, Steve. I would agree in some ways. But.
I actually figured out a way for your background back then, how to play, like how to have a music video playing in your background on your MySpace page.
Yeah, you can do that. You could do that back then. Absolutely.
Yeah,
so I would change the songs out and I would change the page around and go pick a different style for the page and write something different. It was way more involved, in my opinion. But it's out in the pasture now. Jen put in the chat, I think it's still active. I don't know.
I think it is. I'm looking.
Oh, okay. You look. Let us know if it's still active.
Last time I looked at that was in 2011, and my page was still up from middle school.
Well, Jen,
that was crazy.
Yeah, you can find people's images that they used on MySpace on the internet, and it takes you to their. Doesn't it take you to their page?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I still have an active MySpace page apparently somewhere. I have to go back to and see what I said. I'm going to have to do that.
No, I don't think it's up anymore. MySpace got bought by some music.
Justin Timberlake.
Company.
Okay.
I looked for it probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, 4 or 5.
No, I just found the page that says sign into my MySpace.
Yeah,
Crazy.
all my stuff is gone though.
Oh.
Everything, all the messages and everything was gone. I can still log in to my MySpace, but it's completely changed. It's totally different.
Okay.
And it's owned by Justin Timberlake.
Huh.
Oh, Justin Timberlake. He owns MySpace. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how would he buy it? Because
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more like a music like collaboration engine for like music artists to find other music artists to collaborate, kind of a thing.
Right.
And artists in general. But I know what they did with Facebook. They took all the stuff, the perks away to make you focus on the addictive components that were in MySpace, to where that's all you had was the likes and the shares
to get ready. They were building as an entity, building the bridge to what they wanted social media to be, which was permeated in Facebook.
Well, and another thing I learned the other day, along with the fact that what I was saying there, they purposely created Facebook with psychology, with the expressed intent of making it addictive.
Yes, exactly.
And not only that, but the CIA had a surveillance program that stopped the day Facebook opened.
Wow.
Wait, say that one more time, Steve.
Yeah, say it again, Steve.
The CIA had a surveillance program on America that stopped the same day Facebook started.
Yeah.
Facebook became the CIA's new surveillance program.
Correct. Correct. So we've made jokes before when we went on Messenger about being listened to by an office somewhere where they have cubicles and some guy named Ted is listening to our conversation.
Strike.
What? Oh,
don't say it into wishing that I can't even think of a way to say that. Okay.
I'm not wishing.
Yeah, I don't need any. Okay, so just to be clear, we're just talking in general about social media, not specifically. Okay, guys, seriously. Ted, you know that we don't mean anything by it.
And believe on Jesus if you are listening. He will save you from hell.
Yeah, Ted, check into God. Okay.
Yep.
You know,
his name's Ted. You know. Our particular guy, our agent is named Ted.
There's two agents.
Ted, and what's the other one?
John?
John and Ted. John and Ted are our
Bill and Ted, I saw.
Bill and Ted. Oh.
Bogus.
Wild stallions.
And for those of you that know what Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is, they're coming out with a movie. It's officially happening.
They're coming out with the new one?
Correct.
Oh, dude, I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah. So just briefly, Keanu Reeves, I think, is doing a favor for his friend that was his co-star on the film, and they're actually doing a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure 3. So it's them as adults. Now, there were rumors when they did the last one about this, and then it just never materialized. And I am a fan of the franchise. I don't care what anyone says. I'm saying this on a recorded show. I enjoyed Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah. Don't judge me.
Especially the soundtrack. The theme song at the beginning of the original Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is awesome. Okay. Moving on. Yeah. So social media
was the original Wayne and Garth.
Yeah, totally.
You know, may I say something?
Time, excellent. Yeah.
May I say something really quick about this whole government stuff? So I was watching 1984 last night, and I had never seen this movie. I've read the book, but I haven't seen the movie.
Which version?
1984.
Yeah, which version of 1984? They did one recently.
The colored version. I don't know. It's I don't know what date it was on there. I didn't look at
1984. Just kidding.
No, I didn't know they made a newer one. Like what, in the 2000s or something, or
no? They just made one last year.
Oh, I didn't know
that. No, it wasn't that one.
Yeah,
it wasn't that one.
Okay, that's what I was getting at, because it was very different. It was still good, but it was very different.
Yeah. So I was watching it, and I was like, dude, there's so much similarities going on here.
Oh, yeah. Do you know that actually came out in 1984? The movie in 1984?
Yeah.
I think that's the one I was watching. I think that was the actual
Gotcha.
one I was watching. Yeah. But I had to do a paper on it in high school. Had to read the whole book and did a paper on it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was...
you know what? I made a mistake. So the movie I'm thinking of is the Fahrenheit. The Fahrenheit movie was done last year, not 1984. So my mistake. That was an error on my part. I want to say hello to the Blue Bunny. Maria is in the chat room, so everybody say hello to her. I think a few people did. So thanks for coming. Haven't seen you in a while, so we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, I was just thinking about her today. Like, what's up?
What's up, Maria?
What's up, Blue Bunny?
Blue Bunny.
Yeah, Blue Bunny.
What's up?
Yeah, because she joined me on one of my shows on the panel, and then like I didn't see her much after that, and it's been like, okay, what's up?
Yeah, what's up?
Glad to see you.
Yeah, glad to see you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So, not that this is off topic to talk about the way the government has co-opted kind of Facebook for their surveillance program, but anyone that's interested in finding out about that can just do a little bit of research and find out that there's truth behind that. So if you have time, definitely take a look.
Yeah, I literally will be in the middle of like talking to someone on Facebook message, and I'm like, "Hey guys, I know you're listening."
Yep, that's right. It's hilarious. It's hilarious because it makes this sound, and you can tell that something is different, and the sound itself is so bizarre. It's just like a
And sometimes I'll be talking about God, and it'll disconnect, and I'm like,
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. It is interesting. But the thing is, most people know that you're being listened to, and certainly someone is looking at you're looking for keywords because they do it on YouTube, so they find out the way that people get copyright strikes is when you do something they consider it against their community standards,
their ideals
of YouTube. And then they just take it off, and then you have to try it if it's important to you. You have to go through a series. But pretty much what I've heard from the people this has happened to, if they strike it, then they don't fix it. Like they don't give it back to you, even if it's not. We had one. Steve and myself and Mark were just doing a test. And we talked for like 3 hours on Hangouts, but it wasn't even listed. It was never put on TSL. I just used the channel so that we could try some things out, and we were just talking about this, that, and the other. And all I did, we were talking about Tesla, and I played part of a video from public broadcasting station, PBS. That's not station though.
Public broadcasting.
Yeah,
it's public.
Yeah, it should be. It should be, right?
Yeah.
But they gave it a copyright strike because I used the Tesla documentary. But it wasn't even listed. It's not on my page. It's not available. Nobody can get to it, but they still put a copyright strike on it and removed it. So that's how serious it is. Someone other than Ted and John, whose job it is to listen to our messenger conversations and surveil us, is watching all the YouTube videos. And I think it's great if someone is sitting there listening to hours and hours of us talking about this topic's a little more lighthearted than some of the things we talk about. But a lot of the things, especially where it comes to the gospel, we're talking about meaningful things, that they're hearing that. I mean, their sole purpose is to find if there's a copyright strike, but they're hearing, they have to go through hours and hours. Now, I guess they have an algorithm, right? Matthias, anything about that?
AI is doing about probably 80% of it.
Right.
And if AI flags it,
algorithm,
then people look at it.
Yeah, the algorithm, not too much can get through the algorithm.
Right.
It takes care of about 95% of it.
Right, right. So they run the videos through the algorithm or the AI, whatever word you want to use for it, and they pick up on stuff like that, like us playing the Tesla video from the public broadcasting.
You know, I was thinking too from that movie Snowden.
Oh yeah.
He was going into social media and looking for keywords when people were talking.
Exactly.
And, so yeah, it was a pretty interesting movie.
Okay. So
you get that idea from the Jason Bournes too.
Oh sure.
They're sitting there, you know, and they end up killing the reporter because he mentioned just a couple keywords on the phone.
That's it. That's it. And you think that's far-fetched, and obviously if you're not in that game, you're not in politics, and you're not involved. But yeah, at our level on social media, what it ends up being is, well, YouTube, you get a copyright strike and they remove your video. I mean, they don't come to your house and they break in, you know, and take you to jail at this point.
Depends on what you found out.
Well, yeah, and there are some people that are absolutely ridiculous on Facebook and they say, yo, guys, I got some pot, you know, come pick it up or whatever, and they get arrested. They put it on Facebook.
That's just dumb. I'm talking like if they find out something like, you know, an Operation Great, you know, Blackbriar or something like that, you know, where you know, I don't know, Operation something or other, where, you know, they find out, oh yeah, there's plans all along to, you know, to kill Christians in America, but they just haven't, you know, enabled it all yet.
Yeah.
And how Obama is linked in with it, or Trump, or whoever. Because who knows? Maybe Trump is the Antichrist.
Yeah.
I've been hearing that from people, man. I've been hearing that from people.
I mean,
I don't know.
He's not.
I don't think so, but you never know. So. He did help set up a peace treaty.
But it wasn't the peace treaty that. Anyway, I don't want to get off on that.
I thought it was an Any Topic show.
Any Topic? That's what it seems like, Steve. That's what it seems like.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's hilarious. But no, getting back on topic. So the next thing is what's good for kids in the USA, what's not, and I think having social media is fine. But I really want to get to that part more, since we have kind of moved to the social media, because what's good for kids is to not be so self-absorbed.
No cell phones.
No cell phones.
No computers.
Right.
Take them all away. Only 18 and over can have them.
Yep. Kick them outside. Go play out in the woods till the lamplight comes on.
Yeah. More recess.
Right?
More recess.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well,
more using their imaginations.
Yeah.
It's like technology's replaced imagination.
They have none.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, even in the concept, if you're with a group of friends talking about a movie and you're like, what was the name of that actor that's in the movie? I mean, you thought about it, but then if you couldn't figure it out, you let it go for a while and it was fine. Like you went on with your life. But now it's like everyone has a phone and you pick it out and find what it said.
Look it up.
Yeah, look it up. That's all it takes. So I think we probably all agree that less social media and stuff is important, which brings us to our next question. What is our obligation as adults? Obviously, if you have kids, you're in charge of your kids, and this is an important point to make. You should be, at least, rather than letting the public school or society raise your children. So it's different. I don't have kids, so it's not really a problem for me as of yet. But if I were to have kids, I would not be letting the institution of public schools or social media or society raise my children. But a lot of people, from what I observe with other people's kids, they don't all seem to care about that. Just let their children do whatever they want. So why is it, do you think, the individual is often promoted rather than a sense of family and community? Now, this is something we could say a lot about. And Esteban, you're about to take a sociology class, and they'll cover this in the sociology class. And it's fascinating to me about community in general and what it was like back in the day and what it's like now. And this was the most moving thing to me about sociology. And that is how things have changed and devolved over the years. For instance, back then, a lot of they had multifamily homes, meaning that to save money, especially back after the Depression, families lived in the same house. You had your grandparents, oftentimes the parents and the kids were all in the same house. They did that for years. You know, people couldn't afford to have separate houses. So a lot of times people grew up like that. Where kids grew up, here's the point. Kids grew up having multi-generational influence on what they do and getting a chance to see the change of how things used to be. Well, Grandpa tells stories about what it was like when he was a kid, which certainly included trudging through 6 feet of snow to get to class. They didn't have buses back then. They had to walk to school. My dad even tells stories about how he had to walk to school in the snow. When I came around, of course, I went to a private Christian school, so my parents took me, or I rode my bike. Many times rode my bike. So that wasn't an issue. But why do you think, I'll go with Jen first. Why do you think the individual is often promoted rather than a sense of family and community, Jen? You have an opinion?
I think society wants us to be selfish.
Woo! Get right to it.
And I think being selfish is one of the things that tears families apart. So it's kind of connected. Yeah,
it totally is connected. So rather than a sense of family community, it's a perpetuation of the individual, and the individual wants, the selfishness, so to speak, is being promoted rather than caring what your family thinks or caring what the community at large thinks. It's each person with their own phone on their own social media account doing what they want to do in complete disregard of everyone else. And that's where the bullying comes in. That's how we can tie that Jen had mentioned, the bullying. And that's where the bullying comes in. With the advent of social media, it's become much easier to bully other kids. And selfishness definitely plays a part of that.
And I mean, if you think about it, social media has been, I think, one of the biggest things that has broken up families. Even if you're still in the same house, under the same roof, everybody individually is on their devices. So I mean, even in that sense, it's really robbed us of having actual social interaction, person to person. So
I've seen this. Yeah, I've seen this in restaurants where a family of people are eating together and they're on their phones. So they're not conversing with each other. They're not just enjoying the meal. They're talking on their phones. I've also seen groups of kids that were obviously together somewhere. And they're on their phones. And go ahead, Jen.
No, go ahead, finish.
And there are people that actually, I mean, it's almost a joke. I saw it in sitcoms. Hey, do you want to have a play date? Like, yeah, let's have a play date. So these 11 or 12-year-old kids, they both sit on the couch and pull their phones out and look at their phones. That's what a play date is now.
Yeah.
It's kids getting together instead of going outside, as Jen suggests, and getting some air and doing things outside like it was for me when I was a kid. It's almost unheard of now to do that. They've got their phones, they have their social media, and that's what's important now.
Yeah. I have a funny story.
Please.
We had, I want to say it was Thanksgiving 2 years ago at my brother and sister-in-law's, my little brother. And we actually got there, and I was shocked, but then pleasantly surprised that they were collecting everybody's cell phones in this basket. And they had it sat in the middle of the table so you could keep your eye on it.
Okay.
But we all had to actually talk, which was good.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. I was talking to my nephew Brandon, who's also my godson. He was explaining to me he was going to order these like throwing stars, and it's like a throwing star, but it's not, something else. And he was explaining it to me, and he goes, "Wait a minute, let me show you a picture." And he was like, "Oh, I don't have my phone." And I jokingly was like, "Use your words, Brandon, use your words." So it was just like, it was kind of cool though, because we don't do that anymore. When it comes to describing things, we just pop on our device and hop on Google and look up a picture or a video on YouTube or something to show somebody. So it was actually really nice. I missed my phone because I like to take a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
But they had someone designated to actually take pictures of the family event.
Oh, okay.
So that we didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But it was still really nice. It was refreshing.
Yeah. And I have heard that some families that are concerned about this still, they make it a rule, no phones at the dinner table. I've seen that as well, where everyone, including the parents, put their phones in a box or set of. Yeah. set them aside somewhere, so that you still have that family time where people are actually sitting at the table together eating, and they're actually having conversations with each other, which would help with this particular issue of the individual being promoted rather than the sense of family and community. Esteban, do you have a comment you would like to add into this?
Trying to think right now. Like, I know there was something that was coming to my mind when you guys were talking about it, and some of my family. I'm not gonna say who, but I'll be in the living room and somebody texts me and saying, "Hey, bring me a soda, please." I'm like, you could come out and say hi to me, and they're like, "No, I'm in bed. Just bring me my soda." And I'm like, "Okay." They'll just text me, or they'll be right, like, maybe like a walking distance from me, like maybe 2 steps away from me, and they'll text me saying, "Hey, can you get up and get me something to drink?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I talk to them straight directly to their face. I'm like, "Yeah, I can get it for you."
Yeah.
And their face gets all red, and you're just like, "Hey, it's okay, man. You could have just told me that." I'm like, "Right here."
Yeah, here I am. Do you not see me? I'm right here. Use your words, as Jen said. Use your words. Okay.
I don't mean to sound kind of mean about it, but I was like, it's just kind of funny.
No, I don't think you sound mean at all. I think I think you're right on top of it, right there. Yeah. Matthias, what about you? How do you feel about the individual being promoted rather than the sense of family and community? Matthias.
Yeah, it is orchestrated, that it is calculated, and that it is on purpose. I think the attack is against the family.
Yep.
And if Satan can get the family taken apart and make everybody focus on themselves, it would just further his agenda. So I think that the family was a stronghold to keep purity in our country, something that was, important to most people for many generations. And I think even through social media, it's all been about to try to focus on the individual to tear apart that structure.
Yeah. Gosh, I completely agree with you. Thank you, Matthias, for bringing that up. I do agree with you that it is orchestrated. It is a plan. It is people working together to indeed tear apart the family itself as a unit. And they do that in many ways by changing the definition of what a family is. And that's not done overnight. That's been happening over time. And now they're at the point where they've got some momentum. They've got some things working, and social media definitely plays a part in that. And cell phones technology also plays a part. And that doesn't mean that technology in and of itself is elementally, no, that's not the way I want to say that. It's not that it's inherently bad. Technology in and of itself can be good. There's a lot of things that come out of that that are real benefits to society. But again, it's all in the way that you use it. So with social media, is it a way to continue not only surveillance, but a way to break apart the family community? I would say that it is. Steve?
Yeah.
Throw your hat in the ring, sir. Individual.
Throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah.
Okay, individual versus the community being.
Yeah, the individuals being promoted rather than a sense of family and community.
Well, I think the individual component is important without neglecting the family, but it's really the family that's been under attack, and that the sense of community has been the thing that has been pushed and we see ideological wars going on. Like this is, you know, it's what's the word, like jungle law almost in or tribe law going on, instead of the family being the societal um architectural uh system. They're trying to push away from that and actually push away from the individual, um and make it group oriented. Whereas if you subscribe to a particular ideology and you're part of that group, the group matters more than the individual. That's one of the biggest things that's going on in America today, that that is very bad. And so it should be the individual is more important than the group, because what you do matters, and what the group does doesn't necessarily define your identity. And then the next thing obviously would be Christ defines your identity, and you should be finding your identity in that, number one. But yeah, the family breakdown is a big thing in whether you're a believer or not. That was always an important, a very important foundation for a biblical believer, was the family. But I do recognize that there was a guy I remember watching on YouTube a while back that was from Russia or something like that, and he described several steps that they said back years ago, and was part of this, and has tried to reveal it, like kind of blow the whistle on it. But these, like, 5 steps to destroy a nation without a bullet or a bomb. And number 1 was to destroy the family, destroy morality, and there are a few others, but I mean, basically they've done all of it, and there's not much left to do but strike the match that burns the country from the inside.
Yeah, and we can go a lot of different places with that. But there's a difference between, I love what you said, Steve, and I'm not arguing against it, but there's a difference between community and the sociological understanding of what community is, and what you're talking about, which is social activism and the use of social media to have a group or mob mentality.
Right.
Rather than a community, a small, tight-knit community, like in a city or a town, or that stems from it being a family rather than it just being the individual, which then would join a group, like what you're referring to. Because that does exist. Everything you're saying is 100% true.
Yeah. Yeah. Community is good.
Yeah.
When the people in the community know that they are an individual, and their individuality is an integral part, and that the community is not more important than the individual. As a matter of fact, what I do in my community matters more than what my community does for me.
Exactly.
In the words of one of our former presidents, I believe it was Jefferson, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And if you respond that way to your country, or to anything else, that's that idea. The community matters, but what I do in the community matters the most, especially if I want to see change or see something get better. It's the old adage of, don't ask somebody to do what you're not willing to do yourself.
Yeah, that'd be nice if everyone went by that, right?
Well, yeah, then we'd probably be in a whole lot better place, especially if everybody that claims the name of Jesus actually lived it out.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Glenn? Individual is often promoted rather than a sense of family and community.
Well, usually when promotion of the individual, if it's a concerted effort to do so, it usually means someone's at the other end and there's money to be made from it.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. If my mum and dad they were pretty poor, and I never had a pair of shoes till I went to school. I think it would be about grade 5 anyway. I used to go barefoot. And if one of the kids at school had got a pair of new shoes and I'd gone home and said, hey, Billy's just got a pair of new shoes, I want one, they would have said, well, suck it up, buddy. We haven't got the money and you're just going to have to cop it.
Right.
Nowadays, if mum or dad buys Billy a new set of or pair of Nike trainers, what's it called? Do you call it Nike or Nike?
Nike.
Sure. Nike trainers, and he puts it on social media, every kid's going to be running to mum and dad saying, I want one of those because he's got one.
Yeah.
And more often than not, the parents give in. So the promotion of the individual is just promoting spending money.
Mm-hmm.
And kids are given too much. They get what they want rather than they have no sense of actually having to contribute in order to receive. They just have an expectation.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And you take that to adulthood and you're up.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn. What you did in essence is lead us right into the next question. Why are children encouraged to be pseudo adults at such young age? Is it all just about commercialism? So you've made the perfect point as a springboard for the next question. Is it about commercialism? Children seeing Air Jordans, someone has Air Jordans or Nike or whatever it might be, and then pretty soon everyone has to have them. And as far as the being adults, is giving them autonomy, as long as they have their phone or whatever, and they're doing what they want to do on social media, and they're feeding into what the root is behind all this, other than just control, is money. The commercialism that comes from having the same pair of shoes and everybody wanting them, and they use the social media and the network media to do that. Commercialism, literally by commercials and by word of mouth and keeping up with the Joneses. Jen, what do you think? Commercialism, is it all just commercialism? Kind of playing off what Glenn just said.
I think a big part of it's commercialism. I just posted in the chat. I think there is some propaganda. Well, I don't know if it's called propaganda. I don't know if I'm finding the right word, but pedophilia. Honestly, I think when you blur the lines between children and adults, it plays into that whole particular frame of reference. Yeah. So that's part of it. It's a facet of it. It's not the whole thing, but it's a facet. I do think the commercialism is a big part of it as well. Keeping up with the Joneses, getting people to keep spending money needlessly.
Right.
I think, I don't know. I've watched some documentaries and stuff on this particularly, and it's just very interesting how much money is spent on things that we don't need.
Oh my gosh.
And just the focus being on that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. People are buying, crazy amounts of technology and laptops and iPhones, and they are not paying their mortgage or even saving money, even investing it. I don't know. It's like the priorities are off kilter.
Oh, totally.
So yeah.
Totally. So I think they use the commercialism and the social media and all that stuff to get people to put their money down where it is. And then also, to use your point, Jen, you're talking about pedophilia and making adults out of people that are obviously still clearly children, and they're dressing and acting like an adult more at an earlier age.
Yeah.
And people are taking advantage of that for sure. And it's done in print media. It's done in magazines. Where they're taking younger and younger girls and putting makeup on them and suggestive clothing, and having that be a part of society and having it be more and more acceptable.
Yeah.
Which plays on the idea of making children into sexual objects or objects of lust rather than
rather than kids, children. Yeah,
exactly.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. Esteban, you want to weigh in?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Let me make sure that because I got to get my headphones back in because I think I don't know if it's kind of low or not. Am I talking?
You sound good.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so I take it from a biblical aspect of how it makes people want to rely on their money and showing how much they're gonna spend.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting their trust in their money instead of putting their trust in God.
There you go.
Mammon. Jesus spoke about mammon, which is the spirit behind money.
Right.
Who are you gonna trust? Are you gonna trust in mammon or are you gonna trust in me?
Yeah.
So it shows that, and the kids are like, I want mammon, basically. Like, I want this, I want that.
Wow.
And the kids are screaming for this, and I've dealt with I know one of my family members, she completely, like, with the phone, I wanted to give her one of my old flip phones because she didn't have one. She got furious with me.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I don't want that. I want an iPhone. I was like, well, I mean, what am I supposed to do? Like, this is all I have, and mom just wants to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I shouldn't have said that. Dang it.
That's okay.
Just move past it. Just move past.
But I wanted to give her my old flip phone, and she just didn't want it. Yeah. She wanted the expensive new iPhone that came out.
Yes, perfect point. Esteban, I don't know if it was intentional, but you made two points there. One was intentional. The other point you made is talking about mammon or the love of money. And it's printed on our money, In God We Trust. It's printed right on there on the bills, In God We Trust. And when I was growing up, people told me that it was the God that I serve. It was the God of heaven and earth. But it's actually the God of this world. And it's so clear to me now, being an adult and understanding more than I did back then, that they didn't know what they were talking about. It's not the God we serve. It's the God of this world, which is Lucifer or Satan. And the all-seeing eye is certainly not a symbol of God watching over us at the top of a pyramid, which seems ridiculous to me now even saying it. But it is the God of this world, the God served by the Luciferians and the Freemasons. So that was a perfect point, Esteban, and what you're talking about as far as money is concerned. So right on the money that's being spent, obviously it doesn't enter into it, but it's still the same system, whether you use paper money or use your debit card or not. It's still serving something else. When it comes to commercialism, you're not serving the God of heaven and earth. You're serving the God of this world. And the idea of mammon or money certainly is a factor. Matthias? On commercialism. It's all just about commercialism, sir.
Well, I think if you say something and your microphone picks it up, or if you purchase something and your credit card paid for it on the computer, that social media just starts advertising you with those things. Is proof enough that it's all commercialism.
Totally.
But I mean, I don't have anything on my Facebook is nothing but gospel type posts. There's not a picture of any of my family, what we do, where we've been.
Right.
Because it's definitely used for commercialism and surveillance, and it's a good tool to use to reach people that you wouldn't be able to any other way.
Exactly.
But make sure that you don't put yourself out there to where you're the one being taken advantage of.
Exactly. Let me see if I can find it before I comment. But while I'm setting it up, I will just say that Brenda had posted something in there about using online stuff to stay in better touch with people that are more like-minded, and that's a way in which the internet can be a good thing, because people near Brenda are not on the same wavelength, and so she's reached out and she's met people like me and like Jen and others, through the same thing that we're talking about. Also breeds individuality, and selfishness can also, depending on how it's used, get you in contact with like-minded people, and that's a good thing. Doing these broadcasts on YouTube, for instance, YouTube is considered social media, and a lot of people do use it for commercialism, but it's also used to spread the gospel. So again, anything is a tool depending on how you use it. But as far as the topic tonight, certainly commercialism is behind, underneath, and around everything that serves the beast system, for sure. Glenn, did you have a comment you want to add before we move on to the next one about commercialism? Other than what I know you kind of started out, I springed into the question based on your previous comment, but I wanted to know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Sure. I think it's my sort of gut feel is that it's promoted in order to perpetuate the I'll call it myth or whatever you want, that kids believe that they have to be entertained.
Yes.
Rather than find their own entertainment. They sit for 10 seconds without a phone and they're going off the wall.
Yeah.
It's just this constant input that's required. I think it's just total conditioning, and I think if we did take it away and tried to balance it off, I think it would be okay. But I tell you what, there'd be an awful lot of resistance from the kids.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell a quick story, and I've actually already told the story, and it was about a different topic. But it's not, I agree with you, it's definitely the kids, but it's starting to be for adults too.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to me. It showed me how much I'm connected through the use of the internet and the things that I do. Now, the things I do online are generally constructive, but the power went out in our house, and it was out for like 12 hours, and I was in the middle of watching some YouTube stuff when it happened, and the power just went out. Someone hit the pole. It was a rainy night and stuff, and someone ran their car into a pole, and the power was out, and it knocked the pole down to the ground. And it took it was during the remnants of a hurricane that didn't really hit land necessarily, but the weather was really, really bad, and I didn't have internet at all, and no power. And while I was sitting here in the dark and there was nothing for me to do, I literally and I couldn't use my phone because I didn't know how long it was going to be. And I did have my battery charged, fortunately, but I didn't want to use the phone because I like I said, I didn't know how long it would be. So I was alone with my own thoughts, which for me is fine. It's fine if I choose to do that, and I do often do that, to choose to not be connected to the internet and social media and use that. But to not have a choice to use electricity if I wanted to, and it really just impressed on me how dependent I am on electricity and technology and the internet and the way that I use social media, although it's different than with a lot of the ways the kids are using it. But anyway, the point is, for me, it showed me that if I'm not careful, I could be in the same position of being unduly or inappropriately connected to something I have no control over, whether the power's on or off. Now, most times it's on, and this isn't an issue, but it just showed me when it was off and I did not have the option to use it, that there was an unsettled feeling and an anxiety that was in me because I didn't have that as an option. It blew my mind.
Can I mention something about that too?
Well, of course.
We had a tornado warning over here where I live a few years back, and it was so weird. We ended up having our electricity off and everything, and I'm like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
You know, I was in high school, and I was already attached to because I barely got the iPhone when this happened. And I was like, dude, I can't live without it.
Yeah.
I was literally freaking out, and people are like, "Why are you freaking out so much over your iPhone?" I'm like, I gotta watch my videos.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, "You shouldn't be freaking out that much, though. You should be freaking about the weather." I'm like, "I don't care about the weather."
That's it.
I was like, "I care about my iPhone."
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for your honesty, Esteban.
Absolutely. Yeah, and people can learn from that too. You know, me being honest about the story I just shared, and Esteban sharing that. I mean, that's how people learn, and by being that honest and open. I mean, first of all, it's very refreshing. A lot of people wouldn't be willing to do that, so that's good.
I didn't get to comment on this question yet.
I'm sorry, Steve.
You sound like a Muppet.
You know what it is? My microphone is sitting over your icon on the computer. I forgot to call on you. My fault. I apologize. I apologize openly in front of everyone.
No, I'm kidding.
No. Please comment on before we move on to the next.
Sure. This might be a little bit controversial for some to understand, okay, because we think in Americanized growing uppins, okay? But if we look back, and one of the reasons why, you know, like, okay, if we actually were to really raise children the way the Bible instructs us, and like if you look back to Jesus' time, and there's a lot of controversy over what age was Mary when she got with Joseph. Okay.
14.
Right.
Right.
That's the age that's still today right about the flower of her youth.
Right.
But because she was raised and children were raised in such a way that not only were they reading the Torah and memorizing books of the Torah and the Old Testament by the time they were 5, and then they get into a like Jesus did, a trade that their parents taught them, and they worked right alongside their parents in that trade as they grew up, from as soon as they could, you know, move their arms and legs and stuff tactically enough to be able to do something. Like, you know, if that was today, let's say, you know, Jesus was 2 or 1, you know, you're getting a lesson in the scripture almost half the day, and then the other half the day, you know, scripture with your mother. The other half the day, you're out there in the shed, your dad talking to you, and he's giving you something to sand down with some sanding paper. I mean, that's every day you're doing something where you are treated like a person who's going to be an adult someday, not someone who, you know, we give the barest basic, oh, we can't make them do that or make them do this. Like, I mean, by the time our kids are 5 and 6 going to school, the kids from Jesus's day and age would be like light years ahead of them as far as intellectual ability and even physical ability to do work. And so by the time, like, we look at kids who are 14 and 15, and they're still like, half of them or more act like 3-year-olds.
Oh, absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? So, like, sure. One of the things the devil has done, besides, you know, destroy the family, is destroy how children are raised to begin with, so that you have 14, 15-year-old kids hitting puberty. Their body is telling them, you know, it's time. But now we're telling them you need to wait 5, 10, 15 years before you get married and have sex and have a baby. Like, no wonder these kids can't wait. Number one, they haven't been raised in such a way that they're intellectually and physically ready to be an adult by that age.
Right.
And so our society has structured it to where our kids are set up for failure by the time they reach that age, that they should be ready. If we raised our kids biblically, they should be ready to be married at 14, 15, 16 years of age. They wouldn't be children because they'd be intellectually and physically able to provide for themselves.
Right.
And most of our kids today have no clue about how to survive even 1 or 2 days, like you're talking about, without power. Who in on the panel and in the chat room has a cellar and knows what a cellar was originally made for?
Potatoes and onions.
Yeah.
And steering clear of tornadoes.
But do you have one?
No, we don't.
We don't have one. I do know what it is. My grandparents had one.
Right.
I did in New Jersey, but not here.
Right. For storing.
Yeah.
For storing canned goods that the family, matriarch canned, because the patriarch went out and acquired the food to be cooked and canned, so that when you didn't have power or, etc., you had food for months and months and months to go.
Yeah.
Like now we all go to the store, we buy it.
Yeah.
It's all like, if our infrastructure collapsed, we'd be done in a week.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody would have food. And I think it's been set up all that way on purpose for the end times, etc.
Yep.
But
that's why
at the end of the day, like, with the commercialism thing, it's a good thing and it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when it's mass produced, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Because then you have a few handful of people who end up being the really rich people, as opposed to commercialism within groups.
Right.
Where you have like a community, a small town that is commercial within itself.
Right.
Where you have this person's good at this and this person's good at that. And so everybody knows you go to that guy, you want your shoes shined for Sunday. You go to this guy when you want your hair done and, shaved up for Sunday.
That's community.
You go to, this
and
guy,
also bartering.
Yeah.
he knows how to fix your horse up good, or your car, that kind of a community mentality is gone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what
Nobody does that anymore. Now it's just mass produced over a broad scale.
It is. And they've done that by instead of going to the
power of the internet.
Well, the power of the internet and box stores and Walmart and things like that, rather than shopping locally, it's just killed community. But it all works together. It's not one thing. It's several things all working together. And I was going to say about the losing power and would be done. That's why Brenda's so afraid of an EMP, because or losing power for that very very reason. Because but seriously, nobody or few people at least. I mean, there are groups out there that are prepared for just something like this because they're generally paranoid, but also.
Brenda's kind of set. She's got like the old school antique
I was
washer and washers.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be coming over to her house to do laundry if the power goes out.
I was gonna say that Brenda and their family, they have all this old antique stuff, including a washer, an old fashioned washer, and things like that. So she would be better set than most people, I think, in some ways.
I tried washing my jeans in the bathtub when our dryer broke a few years ago. My arm muscles were on fire. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Trying to wring them out. I was just like,
Yeah, that's the thing. But back then, that was the only thing they did. So women were, I would guess, women were much more used to doing that kind of labor.
Oh,
through commercialism.
commercialism has also affected our national health too.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's so easy to get stuff. It's so easy to have everything done for you. That's a workout all day.
Totally.
Nearly every day, you got to cook, you got to do the wash, you got to do that, and then that's why and then the man went out and did the same thing, just on a different type of work.
Yeah.
And so both people were working.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, a free ride for, the guy who went out to work. Right. And I'm sure even back then even though probably would have been judged a whole lot more, there were probably guys that did the at-home stuff, and they had a wife that went out and did the hard stuff. But, at the end of the day, everybody was working and everybody was providing for each other. At least that's how it was supposed to be. And so, there was no, I'm unhappy for being at home. It was,
I'm bored.
There's no boredom.
It wasn't time to be bored.
Right.
No, it wasn't.
And it wasn't a bad thing. As a matter of fact, women used to be honored for being a good woman, a good wife that took care of the kids, took care of the house. They were honored and highly respected. And they went out into the market just like a Proverbs 31 woman. And sold and bartered and traded while their husband went out to, plant the fields and bring in the harvest and do all the really, really hard labor, or went off to war or whatever, all these things we can find examples of in the Bible. And these kinds of people were rewarded. They were exalted, not above God or anything, but, they were honored and respected for being that way. And if we raised our kids like that, we wouldn't have kids that don't know how to control themselves with their hormones at 13, 14, 15 years old. They would know because they'd be in an adult mind frame. Now, I'm not saying there's no such thing as some of these different intellectual diseases and things like ADD or autism, etc. But I think by and large, most of it is because we've raised our kids with TV.
Yeah.
And not from age 0 reading to them scripture.
Right. So, but that was for our age group, and now, but it's not so much. I mean, TV still exists. I'm not saying it doesn't play a factor, but now social media has supplanted television. So because you can carry that around with you now, TV is still a part of it. But for me, it was TV. They called it the boob tube, and my parents gave me TV as a reward for doing other things. Like, did you do your homework? Did you wash the van? Did you do the laundry? So I wasn't given free rein over anything. It certainly was something I earned, where today they call it screen time. So there are some parents that put rules on quote unquote screen time, and that, how they do it is controlled by them a little bit. But at least there are some parents that are aware of this problem, and they do try to control it in some ways. But I don't think that's by and large. I think that's a few people. That's the exception rather than the rule. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. And sorry I forgot to call on you. That's not something I normally do, but there it is.
No problemo. No problemo. You got Thanks, more Steve. On the panel than you're used to.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Oh, thank you. You're using a little bit of empathy towards me. Thank you, Steve. It's
Oh, yeah, that's a familiar topic, empathy.
Yeah, it sure is. So next question is, how do we integrate social media into a child's life and yet ensure they still remain grounded in the real world where people matter and are not just at the end of a text message? I've been waiting for this one because this is a very full and interesting question to me. Jen, do you want to start that out? How do we integrate social media into a child's life? And
sure.
Keep it real.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, first of all, limited amount, if anything, but also trying to incorporate social interaction. I really do believe in homeschooling. I have a lot of friends and a lot of family that homeschool their kids, and it amazes me how these kids at all ages, as I've seen them through the ages, as they've grown up. I mean, I've seen 5-year-olds like having conversations with adults, like their fellow adults. It's crazy. Whereas I know even for me, growing up in public school, it just was really awkward. It was just strange. So there's that. Also, like I just said, social interaction, churches, soup kitchens, getting kids out there to see the world.
Yeah.
I think social media, it sets forth such a facade of life. It's like I'm totally going to butcher this, but someone once said that Facebook is like, it's like the end movie, but you're not seeing what's on the cutting room floor. Everything that was cut, everything that was bad that in making a film, it's that crap's all over the floor. But Facebook is you're not seeing all that.
Right.
You're not seeing all the hard stuff. You're not seeing the struggle that people go through.
Right.
So it's putting forth this false reality, really. Yeah. And so just getting kids out there, even adults, I'm sure, but kids, we're talking about the kids, getting them out in society, just to have interaction with people in all walks of life, and just being a part of society on a personal basis. Yeah. I think that would really help.
Well, I agree. Thank you, Jen. That's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Esteban, you want to weigh in?
I think having a time for like with my kids, I have triplets. So like whenever I have them, when they want to watch TV, I say, okay, you can watch it for a little bit, but we're going to go over here and you're going to come and draw with me or something,
Yeah.
Kind of give them a different interaction with it.
Sure.
And teach them like numbers or how to write letters, and show them how to do certain things with those and how to form sentences and stuff. And
you mean like basic things they should be taught already, right? Yeah.
Yeah, basic stuff. Like my kids, they're in kindergarten right now. They're learning the ABCs and stuff. So I'm like, hey, you know what? When they come over, we have like these little papers that have little outlines of A's and B's and all that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell them, okay, you had your time with your TV. Let's come over here and let's try to write your name. And, just try to interact with them in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Esteban. Thank you. Matthias?
What's the question, really?
How do you integrate social media into a child's life and yet ensure they still remain grounded in the real world where people matter and are not just at the end of a text message?
You have to do it limited.
Yeah, limited.
Let me see. How did my wife put it? Because children and all of us, even adults, we can get, we call it tractor beamed.
Oh yeah, sure.
Actually, with the flickering of the screen, it's frame rate. It's meant to sort of hypnotize.
Yes.
And without any self-control, you can just get sucked into it for hours and hours.
Yep.
And so my wife was saying to my eldest, she was like, if she had more self-control to where she could regulate herself.
Yes.
To where she could just, check her email and, type a few stuff and then go outside and play and, just not have to be outside regulated. But since she can't do that at this time, then we've got to make sure it's limited from our regulation.
Exactly. But that ties into the point I was making earlier, that people with kids should be in charge of their own children rather than allowing either social media or the public institutions. Of course, your kids don't go to public school, so that's not a factor. And Jen also mentioned homeschooling, and I was on my turn, I was going to mention that I used to be very against that before I was awake and before I realized a lot of things aren't as they seem. And I used to make fun of people that did the homeschooling. And I feel bad about that now because I have a better understanding of it. But in its infancy, it was absolutely ridiculous to think that parents could take their children and teach them when they don't have the knowledge. They didn't train in a school to do that. It just was so different back then. And then, like I said, when I became awake to the way that the real world works and saw what the purpose of institutions are, especially the public school system, they're basically just indoctrinating the children and conforming them to their likeness, certainly not the likeness of Christ, and certainly not in the likeness of what the parents might want. So my opinion's really changed on this. So I definitely would not ever send my child to a public school, ever, 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 never. That just would be my personal decision. So homeschooling would be a way better option. And of course, now they have the curriculum is way better, and it's not just the idea of when it started, which is like keeping your kid out of school and just like, okay, today we're gonna go over math, whatever. And so then it was dependent on the parents' understanding of varying topics. So it's gotten way better. But yeah, an example of where my opinion changed. I would agree that restrictions, again, with the parents deciding how much social media is allowed and how much texting, the way that this question ends is at the end of a text message. Life is so much more rich than what social media would imply. I think that point's been made very well. There are so many other things. Jen mentioned outside time. Growing up, of course, we didn't have it. I had TV, but during the day, I wasn't interested in watching TV. I had friends. Outside. Everything was outside. My bike was outside, playing football in the street and kickball and baseball and all the things that we did. Freeze tag, my goodness, capture the flag. All these things that I did were games, and we used our imagination, and we created our own games, and that was way more fun than, I used to look forward to it. I used to look forward to getting home from school so I could go outside and play with my friends. I didn't look forward to getting home so I could go and watch TV. So now I think that's basically all but disappeared. Okay, the neighborhood I live in, there are kids that play outside. I think it's refreshing. They ride their bikes. I saw the other day some kids and they'd gotten a hold of some of the little tiny orange cones, and they were setting up an obstacle course and riding their bikes through these cones. Now, I didn't have cones when I was a kid, but we had chalk, and we drew our own roads in the driveway, and we rode our bikes around there, and someone played the cop and pulled people over for any unknown infraction. You were speeding or you went over the line and things like that. And we used our imaginations, and we were outside all the time. So that would be very helpful. Another way of helping people stay away from the social media is getting them outside and getting them doing stuff and getting exercise. It fits into kind of what Steve said about the public health. The commercialism and the use of fast food, and everything's readily available, and you can just go out and get something. You don't have to work very hard for much of anything. And we have one of the biggest obesity rates in the whole country in America. Because everything is so fast. You can go out and get your food through a window, and it does affect the public health. And so restriction is a good way. Being outside and enjoying nature and using your imaginations again. And this is something, my nephew is 6, and he has no idea how to use his own imagination. He has screens, and his parents are very concerned about this. But my sister even said to me, she said, can you teach him how to use his imagination? And that is scary to me, that you would have to teach a child to use their own imagination. When they're used to just getting on the game or getting on the computer and playing some game that's popular, and it starts out at earlier than 6, and it's unbelievable. Now he's starting to get involved in sports, so he's going to get some of that outside stuff. He's going to do that, but it's just amazing to me that we grew up with just a built-in imagination. I mean, I spent time alone being grounded a lot. So I would create my own games, and you give me a brick wall and I'll think of something to do with it. I mean, I'll think of some game to play with the cracks in the brick or something. I want my imagination or whatever. I mean, I had tools. I had, Matchbox cars and Super Friends, those little action figures and stuff that I played with. But I created my own stories, and I did things where I had to use my imagination. It certainly I wasn't able to watch TV. So back then, if I had had the same parents and they had social media back then, it would have been restricted. I promise. It would have definitely been restricted, and it would have been based on what other things I did to earn that time. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So free reign on the devices is dangerous, and I think it hurts rather than helps. So that's kind of my answer. Esteban?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. What happened?
What happened? We're asking the question about social media. How do you integrate social media into a child's life yet ensure they still remain grounded in real world?
Oh, gosh. You look for, well, my significant other is actually in here right now. She said that you look for other educational forms because she's a teacher's aide, and there's certain things that I'm still like trying to figure out how to deal with things with my kids, and she's usually like, "Hey, why don't you do it in this way with them?" And she really helps me out with that.
Okay.
And as she just said right now, my kids know their limit on Snapchat and all the social medias with that stuff. So
there's limitations. Yeah, that's good. Steve?
Yeah. None, if you can at all possibly.
Yeah.
Because that's why I really truly believe this. That's why kids have that issue. Like you mentioned, I know another person that has a kid about that age, as you're mentioning, Jason, that has no imagination. And it's because the screen is their imagination.
Yeah, somebody else does it for them.
Yep, and somebody in the chat said something I thought was really profound, that letting children, basically, into social media, basically is like letting a child go to school at a porn studio.
Wow. Say more about that. So
I think the idea behind that is twofold. Number one, like, who would actually do that? But we don't realize that when we put a device in our kids' hands, number one, our kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for most of the time. And number two, you're basically putting a porn studio in their hands.
Right.
Especially when it comes to social media and different things like that. It's so easy to find stuff that shouldn't be there.
That doesn't happen in nature.
Like, yeah, exactly. You're not going to go outside and see that very often, if at all. Random cases, but not like you can just type at 3 years old, sex, and find it. By accident, type in those 3 letters. You know, I mean, the stuff kids at 2 and 3 and 4 years old I've seen do that I have friends on a tablet. They know what the buttons do. They know what goes where. They know how to get to this app, to that app, to that app. And they're 2 and 3 and 4 years old, which basically proves my point about kids can learn so much at that age that we're not teaching them. And we're not expecting them to learn, you know, like a child at 4 ought to know you don't swallow a penny. I mean, they should know that by then. Well, that's the thing.
I made change.
Right. But a child at that age ought to know.
Yeah.
And we've with all the safeguards and all the protection and all this, and then we give them the worst thing they could possibly have in their hands, a tablet.
Yeah.
That could destroy their mind forever.
Yeah.
And we say it's okay for you to have access to the entire world at 5, at 3, at 2, at even 14, 12. I mean, you know, at the very least 14, 15, 16, somewhere around that age, when you feel confident about your child's ability to, you know, be somewhat adult about things. You know, my kids didn't have that till they were at least 14. The oldest till she was 16, 17. Didn't have social media.
Yeah, restrictions.
You know, like it was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like too much social media. I mean, we talked about earlier the psychology. They designed Facebook to be an addiction. Yep. You're putting heroin in your kids' hands.
Yeah. The endorphins that come from liking and being involved in other things and people, you know, posting on your page, et cetera, et cetera. And then that ties in the commercialism by any search that you do, as Matthias was pointing out. Any kind of search that you do, you see the advertisements on Facebook. You do something that's not even on Facebook, and then you see the advertisements. I did a search for I want to get a camper that I can hook to my van and travel around. That's still something that I very much want. I'm in a situation where I can't do that right now, but I do occasional searches for that. I started seeing advertisements for campers on my Facebook page. I didn't do it on Facebook. I didn't do it on Facebook. It wasn't anywhere near that. So,
yeah.
You know, I just thought of something. When I was a kid growing up too, my imagination went so wild that after I had that incident of seeing a UFO very up close to me, I wanted to know how the heck that thing was made. So I would figure out in my brain how in the heck it has to do something with the atmosphere. And I would start thinking all these different thoughts in my head, like how to build one, how to use it, how to make sure that when we're going high speed altitudes, how it can sustain our body. I mean, this has happened to me when I was 11 years old, 10 years old, going how to make one of those.
Yeah.
I want to hear that story after we close.
Yeah.
I have a cool question. Whoever played hide and go seek at night in camo?
I haven't.
Never in
that sounds
camo,
fun.
Never in camo, but I did play hide and seek at night. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I could tell you a wild story.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I could tell you a wild story what my cousins used to do with me when I was a kid. They'd put a dark bag over my head, spin me around late at night, and I'd walk around dizzy, and they would punch me in the face.
Oh my God.
You had the wrong kind of friends, Esteban.
That was my cousins.
Your cousins, of course. They're torturing you. Oh my gosh. That's not a fun story.
I was the run of the group, so hey, it was fun though. I loved it.
Oh, you love getting punched.
You like getting punched?
Hey, I love going back because I
were in CIA training for how to not be a snitch on the government. That's what you were.
It was more to toughen me, and I enjoyed it because I would fight back.
Oh, okay, so it worked.
So, yeah, it was fun for me, I guess.
Gosh. Did I ask everyone? I know I'm going to ask Glenn to comment, but Matthias, I think you already commented on this. Is that right?
I think he did.
Yeah,
the integrating social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glenn, you want to add to this one?
Yeah, listening to all your answers, I just came to the conclusion this is a really tough one.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking back and trying to consider what used to happen in the past when all we as children went to other kids' places after school. Now, in those days, parents used to communicate and almost had a community, if you like, attitude as far as what kids did and what restrictions and boundaries were placed on kids, and there was consistency across the board.
Right.
If you went to your friend's place, the same rules applied, and we got used to that. We knew exactly what the boundaries were when we went to another person's place, and we respected them. I wonder if it's as much about the adults communicating as it is about the kids.
Yes. Yes.
Question.
Wait, say that again?
I wonder, is it as much about the adults communicating as much as the kids to put in a community policy rather than just a one-on-one policy within one family?
Okay,
that's
cool. Here's the thing. That's the way it used to be. So in order for me to go to a friend's house, my parents had to talk to their parents before they allowed me to do it. They had to have a conversation with either the mom or the dad, not necessarily both, but they had to have usually the mother. So they had to, what's her number? I'm going to call her and talk to her. And they had to meet the kid too. The kid had to come to my house and they had to meet him or her, mostly guys. But they had to meet the person before they let me play with them. My mom had to approve of all of my friends before I was allowed to spend time with them, or certainly before I was allowed to go to their house, especially spending the night. And then once that was done, it was okay. But so to tie into what Glenn was just saying, the communication between the parents or the community at large, it was regulated when I was growing up. Now, whether they do that or not, whether they check on their kids before they go or play at someone's house or go sit next to each other and look at their phones, I don't know. But it ties into our last little bit that we're going to do before we say goodnight, and that is the question: do we as adults have a responsibility to encourage things like this, set standards, boundaries, objectives, etc., but at the same time do it in an atmosphere of love and understanding? Now, based on our answers so far on all this, it does sound like we will probably all agree that we do. We do as adults have responsibility, and tying into what Glenn said, if the parents were communicating and controlling what the kids do, and such as screen time and what kind of activities we're doing. I mean, when I was a kid, other than once my mom approved the kid, they were not monitoring us. We were outside doing our thing, and we had to come home when it got dark, or my mom would stand on the porch and yell at me to come home. I mean, that was the way it went. So there was communication, and the parents did set the standard, at least as far as I was concerned. But then they weren't like sheltering us to the point where they're like watching us the whole time. And we did some crazy stuff that you would never get away with now, like building a ramp with bricks and a piece of wood and jumping on our bikes in the middle of the street. No pads, no helmet, no nothing. And our parents were cool with that. They're like, they didn't care. They didn't care about that, but then there were other things that they cared very much about. So the question is, and even though I kind of already know the answer, I'll just give each of you a chance to comment on this, and then throw in the last question, which is, do you agree discipline is not so much about wrongdoing as it is about providing a model to a different path? Jen?
Yeah, I'd say this is spot on. Hold on, I'm rolling down to see the question is.
No problem.
Wait, where is that question?
It's right underneath the be cheerful, be active, be enthusiastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wait, where? Discipline. Okay, discipline's not so much about wrongdoing as it is about providing a model. Yeah, I would completely agree. I think if you're disciplining kids and just saying that's wrong,
yeah,
you have to redirect them to something.
yes.
What's the opposite of what they're doing?
Yeah,
you know, or what's the correct way? If you just say it's wrong, it's just I don't know. It's they just have to know a different way of going about it.
right.
So that's my answer.
Yeah. Before we move on, Hendrik just commented. Hendrik said, "True Story Live, your questions already have the answers in them!" Exclamation point with an angry face.
Like they're not mine, they're Glenn's.
Yeah, it's not mine. It's not my questions. It's Glenn's questions.
Glenn said sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, you got me.
Yeah, so he's leading. I suppose they call that leading questions, leading you to.
Yeah, that is correct. I must apologize. I beg humble forgiveness and understanding. Thank you.
Well, we're all about forgiveness here on TSL for sure. We're not lording over anyone with their mistakes for sure. Just as Steve didn't lord it over me when I forgot to call on him for a question. That was a good example. Okay, so Esteban, since it's already a leading question, though, you have an opportunity to comment on these last two parts before we say goodnight.
I would have to say I agree. Also, with me being fairly new with being a parent and all that, like, because my kids are only 5.
Right.
I pray about it before I do anything. I mean, ask for guidance from him, and I mean, sometimes I get kind of scared because like I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I'm like, how am I gonna? And then I go, wait a minute, why am I asking myself how I'm gonna do it? Why don't I ask you?
Yeah, so good point. Good point.
Start praying to God, and it ends up turning out to be a great day, and I end up. We just talk. I talk to my kids, and sometimes they say gibberish things, and I think it's amazing, and I don't know everything on that, but like I ask him to guide me through it because I really wouldn't know how to handle certain situations right off the bat, and it just out of nowhere, I'll talk to them in a lower tone if they're doing something wrong, or be like, hey. You know better than that, and we just talk about it. And with the parents thing, yeah, I think it's a great idea because my mom, growing up, she would talk to the parents before I got to do anything, and she would see how the kid was too, to see if he was going to be a good influence or not.
That's
right. If he was a bad influence, then she would say, stay away from him.
Yeah, and for me, here's the thing, Esteban. With my mom, if I had a kid or a friend that I wanted to play with that I knew my mother wouldn't approve of, I would coach him how to deal with my mom. But it didn't always work. She would always find a way to ask a question that I couldn't think of. Moms are good like that. I got better at it, but she didn't like a lot of my choices for friends, and sometimes she was right. Other times it was that she didn't have the ability like I did to see the good in people. She would just see the things that were objectionable to her, and she would make a decision based on that. That's a great answer, Esteban. Thank you.
One more thing, though. Just wanted to say, growing up, too, I don't know why this is coming up, but, like, some of the kids that she would say no to, I would still hang out with them. And then from a biblical aspect on my part, like thinking about it, I remember love your neighbor as you love yourself. So like one of the guys I used to hang out with, when we were kids, he stole something from me, and I go, whoa. And then that thing came in my mind, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, that was not loving your neighbor as you love yourself. This guy. And I don't know why, but as a kid, I was like, dude, that's just not right.
Yeah, totally.
So.
Thanks, Esteban. Matthias? Again, even though the questions are a bit leading, according to Hendricks, Do we as adults have the responsibility to encourage things like this, such as boundaries, objectives, etc.? And do you agree discipline is not so much about wrongdoing as it is about providing a model to a different path?
Yeah, I would say that we don't just have the responsibility to encourage. I would say enforce things like this.
Yeah.
Standards, boundaries, objectives, regulating, but enforce it with an atmosphere of love, understanding, compassion.
Yes.
So not just encourage, but enforce. And do you agree discipline is not so much about wrongdoing as it is? No, I don't agree. I think it is. I think that they are, again, incorporated, and you need to be able to provide a model to a different path. But discipline is about wrongdoing. That is what it's about.
Okay.
If they're not doing wrongdoing, they don't need discipline.
Interesting. Glenn, do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matthias.
Well, I'm just saying that. So I don't discipline my kids when they're behaving.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. We'd have to ask Glenn if he means discipline as in we're teaching them discipline in their lives as far as providing a model to a different path. But he does say here not so much about wrongdoing. So Glenn, after what Matthias just said, do you have a comment based on these last two questions?
Yeah, I do. The angle was that, from what I've seen, and it seems to be evident, a lot of parents only ever say to their kids or speak to their kids when they've done something wrong.
Right. Okay.
It's never about when they do things well.
Right.
So it becomes a very lopsided scenario, and that's what I was meaning. That's about not so much about wrongdoing. I get your point, Matthias, but like sometimes kids might be just a little in excess, but speaking too loud or a little bit out of turn.
Right.
They're not necessarily doing things wrong.
Right.
So it's not necessarily about wrongdoing. It can be anything. It just but just showing them the way. Like, say, okay, the reason you don't just say to your kid, "Shut up." You say, "Okay, the reason I'm asking you to be quieter is because someone else is speaking." You that's what I'm trying to say by setting the model rather than just saying it's totally about discipline.
Okay, cool. Matthias,
right. Well, and with that, I would concur.
Yeah.
I think that would be rearing the children up correctly. Is how I would word that or look at that myself. So I get it from where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they are doing right, they should be getting. They should be commended for it for sure.
Absolutely.
But I don't think disciplining them or looking for reasons to discipline them when they're not doing wrong is ever a good thing. And I know there's people out there that do that. So
yeah,
they sort of have like a power. They love having kids because of the power trip that they get from it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that happens.
Sadly, in this world.
Yeah. Thanks, Matthias. A quick hello to Mike W, who came in late. I totally understand, buddy. You say you're exhausted. Definitely get some rest. But listen to the playback if you get a chance. And also to Alex, the authentic Alex. We have the real thing in the chat room. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And listen to playback when you get a chance. It's good to see you, brother.
Will the real Alex please stand up?
That's right. Please stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. Well, that's it. We got through the everything, and I really enjoyed the discussion. It was kind of a different type of broadcast, but very enjoyable. And we hit on a lot of subjects, and really enjoyed it. And want to thank each of you on the panel, and of course I'll go to you to get a chance to say goodnight, and we'll start with Glenn. Say goodnight to everyone, sir.
Good night, everyone, and enjoy your Easter, and eat crap on Cripps. That's my little comment. Give it to him, old boy.
I didn't catch it. What did you say?
I said they've got to give it to you, buddy. You're old. You
Yeah.
will be old.
I will be old. Okay, so right now I'm not technically old, but I will be come next Tuesday, right?
No, yeah, yeah, that's right. Got it.
Yeah, next Tuesday.
Have fun.
I will. I will enjoy myself. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
Yeah, see ya. Jen?
Good night, everybody. God bless. And thanks for being here and joining us and having some fellowship and good discussions. I really enjoyed it.
I did too. Thank you,
night,
Jen.
guys.
Appreciate you. Esteban? Esteban?
I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Good night, everybody. God bless every one of you for being here, and thank you for joining. Thank you for having me join with you guys. It was awesome. The discussion was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Esteban. You're welcome. You added a lot to the conversation, and loved having you. I did. Thank you. Matthias?
It was a pleasure, guys. Always fun to join you. Questions good as always. And I think we're not having one next week. Is that what you said?
That's correct. So next week falls, it's my birthday weekend, and also my niece Autumn, her birthday falls around that same time. So we're having an Easter / birthday thing on Sunday. So I thought it would be too much for me to do all that on Easter and all that for that particular weekend. So yeah, we won't be having a show next Sunday, but we'll resume the Sunday after. So thanks for bringing that up, because I can make that announcement. So no show next Sunday. We'll be here 2 weeks from tonight, and we'll take it up from there. Yeah. So thank you, Steve.
Yeah. All right. And good night, everybody. And my answer is parents have the utmost privilege, responsibility, and command to raise their children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, and to raise our children in the way they should go, so that when they are old they will not depart from it. And it's
did I forget you again?
Maybe.
I apologize. I thought I called.
It's okay. It's okay. There's so many people, and a lot of our answers, intertwine with all the different questions.
Yeah.
But
don't forget the reverence of the Lord either.
Huh?
Don't forget the reverence of the Lord.
Oh yes, the fear and admonition. That fear, reverence. Yes,
right.
Same concept. And it's all it's definitely one of the things, the things I'm seeing. Suffer the little children to come unto me.
Yeah.
Basically, and those that don't, and that means to give every effort toward the children coming unto Jesus.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what a parent's ultimate responsibility is to make every effort to bring them to Christ, in how we raise them and how we teach them and how we love them, etc. And so that's the ultimate responsibility. And woe unto those who don't, and woe unto those who prohibit that, and woe unto those who, worse yet, harm the little children. It'd be better for them to be those people, especially those parents who allow abuse to happen to their children, and some of the things that are happening today that are being tolerated as acceptable, as okay for their children to be involved in. Those parents should have it, according to Jesus, should have a millstone tied around their head and tossed into the sea. because that would be better for them than what's coming.
Right.
If they don't believe, and etc. But I mean, the gospel is forgiveness for them, but woe to you who do that.
Yeah.
Without repentance back to Christ, to turn to Christ, away from everything you could possibly trust in, to trusting in Jesus alone. But I think Jesus was pretty clear about that. You harm these children.
Yeah.
Something bad is coming, unless you worse, possibly than other judgments for people, unless you are under the blood.
Oh, I agree.
So,
And they think that they're getting away with it because we live in a society that's perpetuating this type of abuse, and they think that no one sees, and they're very, very wrong about that. And I completely agree with what you're saying, Steve.
And I don't want to also say, like, I do understand a lot that half the time it's abusers abusing, and abused, those that have been abusing. I mean, and that those that were abused are so scarred they have no framework as to what's right and what's wrong anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why we as the church, I think ultimately in some sense the responsibility, although they chose it, who didn't preach the gospel to them, who didn't show the love of Christ to them when they should have, who wasn't an ambassador for Christ in that person's life, and pretty much kind of allowed that to happen, so that the abuse perpetuated. So I think there's responsibility on both sides here, but ultimately it's how a parent raises their children is and lastly, it's a command of the Lord to raise our children right. And so, I mean,
perfect.
It's a beautiful thing, but it's also a terrible thing.
It is. It's a responsibility, but if you're going to have kids, it is a responsibility that you should take seriously.
Because you're holding the possible eternity of someone in your hands.
Yeah.
That the Lord has entrusted you with, his child.
Right. Well, fortunately, in that case, Steve, it is the Holy Spirit's responsibility to, as it says, Jesus will receive everyone that's his, everyone that the Father gave him. He will reconcile to himself. So, not taking away from your point. If God gives you children, they are your responsibility up to a point, and then. But certainly,
it's on them to believe or not. But I mean, I think there's some. That's this comes from some of what my channel is about, of course. That it's war, and the church, the body of Christ, is supposed to be at war daily against the devil.
Right.
Yes, we know the ultimate battle, the ultimate war. The war has been won, but all these battles for the individual souls of people, that is won for them should they choose to believe. At the end of the day, Christ placed a lot of responsibility on the body of Christ. We won't lose our salvation or any of that, but we could perhaps be keeping someone from entering in because we didn't preach the gospel to them.
Maybe that's a topic for another time to discuss, for sure.
I'm throwing it out there to just let people think, like, that's how important I think the preaching of the gospel is. Otherwise, why would he tell us to preach it? If everybody that is supposed to be there is going to be there somehow.
Well, one thing too, Steve, that wanted to talk about when you said that about parents and stuff, that explains a lot, because I used to think that God was this evil God when I was growing up. Sometimes I would think that when I was a kid and stuff, because my dad wasn't really there. So it put something in me where I was like, is he really there for me then? I used to think that when I was a kid, like, is God really there for me?
Well, the answer to that, of course, is yes. But if you didn't have a father that was present, I would definitely see where you would wonder. You would ask that question.
Yeah.
But obviously now you understand that he was there for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I knew that. I knew that now. And it makes me, it touches my heart a lot, man. Like I'm sorry to say, well, I shouldn't say sorry, but it's just, it makes me, it does make me cry because I never had that growing up.
I understand. Yeah. God gives you the blessing that you'll never get from your father, from your earthly father.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Steve.
If it doesn't go on and on for, I would like to close the show. It's already getting close to 11:30. So
2 minutes, no less or no more. I mean, no more. Okay.
I'm setting
the whole dad thing.
Yeah, please do.
You said. Go ahead.
Steve's exhaustion platform.
158.
Steve's exhaustion.
156.
Okay. I watched the movie. I got to watch the movie with my family this weekend. I Can Only Imagine.
Oh, that was excellent.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
it's excellent.
gosh.
I lost it.
Oh my, yeah, I did
Yeah,
too.
I cried like a baby. Sobbed.
Yeah. Like totally. For like 20 minutes, like 50 or more. And it revealed to me that I still had some area with my dad's passing that I needed to work on. And it totally, like, I already loved the song to begin with. And then, like, now with hearing the story behind the song, it's like that song's meaning just, like, intensified 1,500.
It totally did. I completely agree.
You know.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
And
like, I
did some research after seeing the movie, and Hollywood did change a couple of things in the narrative, but pretty much it was very, very close. The meaningful and important parts of that film were very much accurate to the use of storytelling and the way that it was laid out. Great acting, great storyline, even the use of music in that. They use some secular songs, but I particularly don't have an issue with that whatsoever in storytelling, for storytelling purposes. But what a wonderful story. And I would suggest it to anyone out there that has heard the song or knows anything about it. It is fantastic. Was that all you wanted to say, Steve?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just awesome. And it goes to show you, to me, the whole thing to me was like, when you think you've gotten somewhere with something, you've moved past something, very sometimes you're ignorant of the fact that there's still stuff there you need to deal with.
Yeah.
But it was so profound because it was like, for me, I didn't get that time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My dad was always working. I mean, he provided a roof over my head, and I had clothes and food, and never wanted for anything. But as far as his time is concerned, it was very limited, and that did happen.
I meant the time at the end.
Oh, the movie, the time at the end.
Right,
yeah, absolutely.
Right. It was.
Well, don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Yeah. No. But yeah.
The end is worth it.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Right.
You were about to spoil it. No, that's
sorry.
But definitely, Steve, I'm glad you brought it up because that is a great film. It is family friendly, wouldn't you say, Steve? In general, there's not much in it that would be offensive to people that if they wanted to let their what would you say, like 10, 11
any age.
No, any age, you'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about Jesus and how you
and some of the way that his father treated him is depicted in the movie. Some of the abuse and stuff might be more difficult for younger kids.
Never even heard of this movie.
It's a movie based on the song I Can Only Imagine.
Yeah, go watch it, Esteban. Run, don't walk. Run, don't walk. Right. Say goodnight, Steve.
Good night. Love y'all. Be blessed in Jesus. Believe in him. Go to heaven.
Man, there's the quick and short gospel, the longer than 2 minutes on the comment, but then the short gospel. And I wasn't laughing at you, Steve. I was laughing at Glenn's comments in reference.
I know. If you want the long gospel, go to my channel.
That's right. That's right. And not the new channel, but the old one.
And the new one. I got it up there too.
Oh, never mind then. Go to Vessels of Warfare on YouTube and check it out. I do also want to say good night to the chat room. You guys are awesome. I love your conversations, and there's lots of fun tonight, and also lots of poignant comments as well, and being involved in the conversation. And I think I did say good night to everyone except for Cupcake Puppy, which I did not say on air. So I wanted to make sure I covered her as well. Thank you for coming. We thank everyone for just being here and being part of the fellowship in the chat. We definitely do not take it for granted. We appreciate you guys. If you're listening to playback and like what you heard, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell if you want notifications of when the show's going to be on. And again, no show next week. We'll miss you guys, but we'll be back the week after, the weekend after Easter for another episode of True Story Live. Thanks again to the panel for being part of the show. Matthias already took off, which is understandable. He's had a busy day. But thank you, you guys on the panel, for being part of it. Esteban, again, thank you for also being part of the panel. You're more than welcome anytime you'd like to join. Of course, I will clear that with the rest of the panel. I kind of just already said, but you're welcome to be a part of it if you'd like to be, for sure. Your comments were very helpful and insightful. So thank you.
Definitely. I love being on here. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you again for being a part of True Story Live, and I hope you have a good week and a good Easter next weekend. And until then, good night and take care. God bless.